Hi, a couple of days ago, I released a video about using your IRAs, your self-directed IRAs, and your solo 401k for the purpose of buying an investment property. And I've actually had some questions from people who are wondering, could they use their pensions to buy a primary home? Because in the video, I made it quite clear that for what we were talking about, and that day, it is strictly forbidden. It's a prohibited activity to use that property in any way, shape, or form for your own benefit. It must only benefit your pension. So the question was, is there anything, excuse me, is there any way I can use my 401k or my IRA or my Roth or whatever to purchase a home I can live in? So if that's was something that you were interested in knowing more about, this video is for you. I am going to go into it. It's not as straightforward, and it's definitely not always advisable, but there are some ways you can actually take money out to buy a home for yourself to live in, or at least help with the down payment. So if you want to know more about that and know how you can do that, well, I suggest you stick around for a little while, because that is exactly what I'm going to talk to you about today. The question is, can you use your retirement money to buy a home? And the answer, as you'll know, is yes, but it's not quite simple. But first of all, let me introduce myself. If you're new to the channel, I'm very welcome. I hope you will enjoy my videos. And if you are a repeat visitor, please feel free to fast forward past my self-introduction here. My name is Bent Danholm. I'm a real estate broker and owner of Maxim Realty Orlando and Maxim LLC in Southwest Florida. I have made it my mission to try to inform homeowners, primarily in Central Florida where I'm based, but basically really anyone in Florida, about things that they need to know about real estate, about buying and selling real estate, about the market and whatever's coming up. So that's the purpose of the video. And if there's something that interests you, well, feel free to subscribe and hit that little notification bell so you know what's going on in my channel. And if you like this video or any of my other videos, also feel free to give it a thumbs up. That would be very helpful, or a little comment in the comment section. Or if you have any criticism, I welcome that too. Anyway, can you use your retirement money to buy a home? That is a good question. And the very, very short answer to that question is yes. But with a lot of rules and a few smart options and a whole lot of traps you'll not want to fall into. And before we go any further, let me just point out, I'm a real estate broker. I'm a real estate brokerage owner. I am not a financial advisor. I am not a tax advisor. I'm not a CPA. I'm not a pension advisor. So anything I say here in this video is for informational purposes only and for nothing else. I strongly encourage you to check out if any of this applies to you. If I got something wrong, I hope I haven't. I really tried to do my research on this, but I am not an expert. So please make sure that if you're going to do any of these things, use your pension to buy a home, do not take this as advice to do it or not do it. If you're interested in learning more, I'm more than happy to point you in the direction of an expert in the field. I'm happy to help you buy or sell your home. That's what I do best. But any other things, that would be the appropriate expert. So that was that little disclaimer out of the way. So in this video, I'll walk you through the facts as far as I can tell them. We will try to cover what's allowed under the IRS rules, how 401ks and IRAs can be used, what you can and can't do with a self-directed IRA, and what to expect if you have a pension. But like I said, these are just my layman opinions and what I've been able to find out as layman. So please, and I cannot say that enough, I'm not any of these people I mentioned before: financial advisor, pension advisor, CPA, or tax advisor. If you need advice on this, please do contact one of these people. But I will try to talk about what I see as the biggest pros and cons about doing this, and then you can make up your own mind of whether this is a smart move for you, and if you want to investigate it further with the appropriate expert. Because if you get this wrong, the cost can be really, really expensive, and I'll get into that later. So make sure you get it right, and don't, like I said, don't follow this as advice. This is only for informational purposes. So please note how important it is to talk to a financial tax professional before you do anything of this sort. All right, well, let's get started now that we got that out of the way a couple of times. And let's begin with the most common type of retirement plan that most people in the US have is a 401k. If you have a 401k through your job, you typically have two ways of access the funds in that account before retirement. You can borrow from it or you can withdraw from it. Both options can help you come up with cash for a home, but they work extremely differently. So let's start with borrowing. Most employer plans, as far as I can tell, allow you to take out a loan from your 401k. A lot of people know that. And the IRAs allows you to borrow up to $50,000 or 50% of your vested balance, whichever is less. So if you have $50,000 in your 401k, you can take out up to $25,000, which is 50%. If you have $250,000, you cannot take out $125,000. You can take out $50,000, which is the maximum. So it is 50% or $50,000, whichever is less. But you can definitely borrow that money out of your 401k. But you have to pay that back. The loan has to be repaid with interest and usually within 5 years. But if the loan is for buying your primary residence, like the home you're living in, the repayment term can often be extended, sometimes up to 15 years. And it's noteworthy that the interest that you're paying on the loan is to your own retirement account. So at the end of this, you will benefit from it, but you have to pay interest on the loan that you basically take out from your own account. So if you take money out as a loan to purchase a primary residence, you can probably spend 15 years paying it back, which is not going to make your monthly payments too high. And if you take it out for a loan out for any other purpose, you would probably have to pay it back within 5 years. And like I said, the interest you pay on it, because you have to pay interest on it, that goes right back into your 401k. You're not paying a bank, you're essentially paying yourself interest, but not an interest that you can spend right now. But that's not all of it. There is a lot more to this. So let's go over the pros from borrowing from your 401k. If you take out a loan, you don't pay taxes, and you're not going to be penalized when you take out a loan. Since you're borrowing effectively from your own account, from an account you manage, there's no credit check. You can get access to the money fairly quickly, depending on the administrator of your 401k, but usually within a few days. And again, like I said, the interest that you're paying that back to yourself effectively. But there are also some cons about taking a loan out of your 401k, and they are fairly big. First of all, the money you take out, they will not grow anymore. So you need to know that obviously your pension is not growing with that money. It will grow with the interest you're paying on it. And if you can afford it and you decide on a higher interest, that might actually be better return on the investment. But remember, that interest is, as far as I know, not tax deductible. So as long as the money is out as a loan, because the interest is not tax deductible, you obviously don't want to pay as little interest as possible. So you will lose that potential compound growth that you will have if the money stayed in your 401k, and that depending on your age and how long it take you to pay that back, that could potentially mean tens of thousands of dollars less when you actually retire. Secondly, the money you repay, what comes out of your take-home pay after taxes. So when you withdraw that money again in retirement, it'll be taxed again. So when you pay it back, you're paying it out of after taxes. There's no deduction for the repayment. And that's why people say that if you have a 401k loan, the interest is double taxed, because it's not tax deductible when you pay it into your account, because you're paying the loan back. And in this country, interest rates, except for a little bit on your mortgage, is not tax deductible. But when you take the money out, that interest that you paid out of your after-tax money will be taxed again. So since you paid it with taxed money to begin with, and you're being taxed when you take money out. People say it's double taxed, and that's not actually far from the truth. And there's a third con, not a con, but there's a third thing that you need to be really aware of if you're taking money out as a loan at 401k. If you leave your job, whether you leave it voluntary because you find another job or you get fired or whatever, that outstanding loan that you took from your 401k typically becomes due really fast. And if you don't pay it back within the time frame, often by tax filing day of the following year, which gives you less than a year. If you took out 50,000 and you need to pay it back in less than a year, that's a lot of money to pay back in a very short amount of time. If you don't pay it back within the tax filing day the following year, that could be, or that would be treated as a withdrawal, and that means that your money you took out would be taxed. So you will have to pay income taxes on the money you took out that you initially thought was a loan. Good news is you don't have to pay it back, but you'll be taxed out of it. And if you are under the age of 59 and a half, you will, on top of your income tax, pay a 10% early withdrawal penalty. So that's something that's really worth noting. So you have to sort of feel very, very comfortable that you're going to stay in in that same job for a long time, at least the time it takes for you to pay that loan back if you take a loan out to buy a house. So it can work, but there are significant risks for doing it. Then let's talk about the second option, which is withdrawing money from your 401k altogether to buy a home. This is obviously different from a loan, because you're permanently taking money out. And once they're out, you cannot put it back because you took an early withdrawal. Can you do this to buy a home? Well, sometimes you can. Some 401k plans allow what's called a hardship withdrawal. The IRAs includes buying a primary residence as one of the allowable hardship reasons. But there's a caveat here. The plan itself has to permit it, and not all plans do. You would have to check with your plan administrator to see if your plan allows for an early withdrawal to buy a house. And now here's the catch. Even if your plan allows it, and even if the IRS says it's a qualified hardship, that does not mean that you don't pay taxes on it. Unless you meet a very specific exemption, you'll owe regular income tax on the withdrawal. So if you take out $50,000, that $50,000 will be added to your taxable income for that year. And if you're under the age of 59 and a half, I don't actually know how they came up with that. That's an interesting number, but 59 and a half is the number. You will also owe a 10% penalty. That can quickly run out. So let's say that you withdraw $30,000 for a home purchase, and you're in the 24% tax bracket. That's $7,200 in federal tax, and then you can add another 10% penalty if you're under 59 and a half, and that means that out of the $30,000 you took out, you're only going to get $20,000. So that's a huge price to pay for a $30,000 cash injection. And if you live in somewhere like California, New York, and only are here in Florida part-time, you would probably also have to pay state income tax on it. So it could be pretty expensive pretty quickly. And the worst part, even if you say, I'm okay with losing $10,000 or more, that is that now that money is gone from your retirement account, and they're gone forever. There's no more tax deferred growth. You cannot. There's no more compounding on that money, and there is absolutely no way of putting that money back in, unless you make new contributions within the annual limits. But you cannot put that amount in as an extra deposit into your retirement account. So the bottom line of this is that 401ks, if you have that, a loan might make sense if your job is stable and you have a solid repayment plan. A hardship withdrawal is usually a very last resort because of the taxes and penalties. And as always with anything like this that can cost you a lot of money, always read your plan's rules first, because they can vary, and make sure you take all the advice you can to see if there are any other way you can get your hands on that money than taking them out of your of your 401k. So let's talk a little bit about IRAs, individual retirement accounts, as they're called. Here's where things get a little bit more flexible, especially if you're a first-time home buyer. If you have a traditional IRA, the IRS allows you to withdraw up to $10,000 to buy, build, or rebuild a first home without the 10% early withdrawal penalty. But you will still owe income tax on that money because traditional IRAs are funded with pre-tax dollars. But you don't have to pay the penalty. There's also a lifetime cap. This isn't the $10,000 is a lifetime cap. You cannot take them out annually. Once you use your 10,000 exemption, it's gone. So the maximum you can take out is $10,000. So if you desperately need $10,000 to make that deal go through, it might be worth doing it. But if there are other ways you can do it, and definitely talk to an advisor before you do anything like that. And how, just so you know, the way the IRS defines a first-time home buyer, if you decided, well, I want to investigate this more, in the IRS's eyes, a first-time home buyer is someone who has not owned a home in the last 2 years, and that includes you and your wife, or your spouse, sorry, if you're married. You can each use the $10,000 exception. So if you both are first-time home buyers by that definition, and you have the $10,000 in your individual IRAs, you could potentially take $20,000 out. So let's say that you do decide to take the $10,000 out from your traditional IRA to buy a home. And if you're in the 22% tax bracket, you will owe $2,200 in federal taxes, but no penalty. If you're in the same 24% bracket as we talked about before, you'll owe $2,400. And if you both take it out, you'll owe that each. That is a lot cheaper than taking an unqualified withdrawal from a 401k, but it's not painless, and it's also a lot less money you can get out. So if you have a Roth IRA, the rules are even more favorable because Roth contributions are made with after-tax dollars. So the traditional IRA, when you put money into that, it is deducted from your taxable income. If you put money into a Roth IRA, the contributions are made with money that are taken out of after you pay your taxes. So with a Roth IRA, you can always withdraw your contributions, what you put in, anytime, tax and penalty free, no strings attached. Anything you put in, you can take out again. Those are the rules. But when it comes to the earnings from the Roth IRA, whatever interest, whatever dividends, whatever profit you made from selling stocks in your Roth IRA, whatever profit you make from any other investment in your Roth IRA, that's what they call the growth in the account. There are some rules. First of all, you need to have held the Roth IRA for at least 5 years and be a first-time home buyer to withdraw up to $10,000 of earnings. But that is tax and penalty free. If it's been less than 5 years, you still avoid the 10% penalty if it's for a first home, but you will have to pay income tax on your earnings. So as you can see, if you have a Roth IRA, it's a lot more flexible, but also you actually paid into that pension account with money that you already paid taxes on. So the Roth is a great source of flexibility, especially if you had it open for a while, and that while is at least 5 years. But make sure you don't just assume that all the money is available tax-free. So the IRS, they have sort of ordering rule or priority rule, if you like. Whatever you take out, that goes from contributions first, then conversions, then earnings. That gets a little bit technical, so it's definitely worth speaking with a pro before you withdraw anything. But like I said many times in this video, if you decide to do any of these things to buy a home, take money out for any other reason of your pension, you need to talk to a pension advisor, tax advisor, probably a CPA as well. Then we move on to what they call the self-directed IRAs, the SDIRA, because this is where people often get a little bit misled, I've been told. A self-directed IRA is just a type of IRA that allows you to invest in alternative assets like real estate, private equity, gold, and so on. If you see those commercials on TV when they say you should invest your pension in gold, they are talking about self-directed IRAs. So this means that you can, from a self-directed IRA, use the money, the retirement account to buy a house. And that was one of the things we talked about in my last video, because this is where it gets critical. If you buy a house from a self-directed IRA, you cannot live in that house. You cannot even stay there for a night. You cannot rent it out to your kids. You cannot work on the house. I'm not going to go into too much of this. Anyone, your parents, your business partner, nobody can live it. You cannot mow the lawn or fix the roof yourself. And you can absolutely not use it as a vacation home. So that is a pure investment. So if you're looking at this as a way of buying a home to live in, probably not use your self-directed IRA. That would be pretty bad. And why is that? It's because that would qualify as what the IRS calls a prohibited transaction. And if you violate rules and have prohibited transactions, your entire IRA could be disqualified. And that literally means that your whole account is treated as if it was distributed to you, fully taxable and possibly penalized as well. So before you even look into using a self-directed IRA to buy real estate, know that the only way you can do it is real estate as an investment, and even then make sure that you talk to the appropriate advisors. We can advise you on what real estate to buy. We cannot advise you on how to spend the money from your IRA. So yes, your IRA can own a rental property, but it must be strictly for investment. And all the rent and any other income from that must go straight back into the IRA. All the expenses, the repairs, the taxes, the insurance, everything else must be paid from the IRA. And you cannot in any way, shape, or form commingle your personal funds with the IRA funds. So you will need a qualified custodian to oversee those transactions. It is pretty powerful that you can do that with an IRA, but it's also very complicated and definitely not a DIY strategy unless you are an expert in this. Even so, you would still need somebody outside of your own domain to manage that investment property. What about other pensions? What they called defined benefit plans. Well, the short answer to that is they don't allow any access to funds while you're still working. There are a few exceptions, but they're rare, and you generally cannot borrow or withdraw from a pension before retirement date. So when you retire or leave your job, some pensions give you a choice. They can give you monthly payments for life or a lump sum. If you take the lump sum, you can roll it into an IRA to avoid taxes. Then, if you want, you could use that IRA money to buy a home under the same rules that we just talked about and that I talked a lot about in my last video as well. But in general, pensions are not a flexible source of funds for buying a home, at least not while you're still employed or while you're still working. Right, let's just recap the big picture here. The advantages of using retirement funds to buy a home, if there are any, let's go over them now. It may be the only big chunk of money you have access to. So, and if it's done correctly, a 401k loan will let you borrow from yourself with no taxes or penalties. With the Roth IRA contributions, they offer a incredible flexibility and zero tax consequences. But again, you need to take advice and make sure you do it the right way. And if you're a first-time home buyer, as in somebody who hasn't owned a home for 2 years, there are some IRA exceptions that can provide a pretty tax-smart way to cover your down payment. But to all of these, there are definitely also some downsides. You will lose your compounding growth of the money, and that growth is tax-free or tax-deferred, if you like. Taxes and penalties if you run into some of those, which you will with some of the things we talked about, they can shrink dramatically, and in some cases even take away a third of what, excuse me, maybe more than a third of what you're taking out. If you use the 401k loan, if you lose your job or decide to change your job, that loan becomes repayable pretty fast. And there are some pretty heavy complexibles and legal landmines, if you like, with self-directed IRAs. And then, of course, there's the overall danger, no matter what you use, of undermining your long-term retirement security for a very short-term need. Anyway, this is definitely not a black and white issue. For some people, using retirement funds might be the only way to make home ownership a reality. For others, it's a decision that sets them back financially for decades with no real gain. So what's my final thought on this? Well, I would not make that decision alone. If you feel like you have to take money out, then speak to a financial planner, talk to a tax advisor, ask your plan administrator for the rules, and make sure that the math works for you, not just now, but for the future. So the biggest takeaway from this video, I would say, is if you're even considering using your pension to purchase your primary home, take all the advice you can get and make sure that you get it right, and make sure that you have exhausted, in my opinion, every other possible way of getting money. But again, that is not advice. That is just my opinion. Anyway, thank you for watching today. If this episode sort of helped you clarify things, I would love for you to follow and hit that notification bell so you get, if I make anything else that you find useful, you get the notification. And if you really like the video, maybe it's a fraction of a second to hit that little thumbs up button and give me a thumbs up. And if you could spend another 20 seconds, maybe write a little comment, whether it's positive or negative, I would love to hear from you. If you need me to refer you to somebody who can advise you on this, I'm more than happy to do that. If you've decided this is just what you're doing and you talk to the right people and you need help with buying real estate, I'm also here for that. Anyway, thanks again.
Hey, it's Ben Danholm, and listen, if you don't follow this channel, there's a good chance you'll never see me again. I consistently create helpful content for those who are currently in the real estate market. This information can be extremely helpful for your buying and selling needs, so be sure you like and subscribe here. And most importantly, leave a comment to let us know if this video was helpful for you. We're here to help the Central Florida community, and we always love your thoughts and questions. Follow now, and I'll see you with our next helpful video.